and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I've got Kieran Edwards. Kieran is the co-owner of Dead Pixel Films. He's a film director and a producer. Hey, Kieran, how you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
Thank you. I'm finally glad it's nice and sunny and spring is here.
Yeah, it's definitely changing now, isn't it? We're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah, it's just like lifted my mood so much. Because when you're in a studio, it's dark. You go to work and it's dark. You're in the studio, it's dark. And you get home, you're driving home in the dark. It's a bit like, I need some sun.
No, I know exactly what I mean. We quite often have working in production like early call times every so often, and you're getting on set and you're like, wow, I shouldn't be out of bed yet. But now it's cool because we're up and we're like, oh, I feel like I could have done a day's work so far because it's nice and bright.
It's nice. It's nice to even like get home and be like, right, I can walk the dog for half hour and still got sunlight.
yeah, exactly.
Just nice. It's nice. So how did you get into film and like directing, production? What's your path to where you are now?
To be honest, my journey into it all's quite different to most people that I meet that are in production anyway. I've not come through the traditional channels of kind of studying film at uni and being a runner and things like that and working my way up. I actually studied music tech at uni in Leeds, and during the sort of final sort of part of the course, we did what's called an FMP, which is a final major project. So it's like the practical equivalent to a dissertation. And what I did there, set up a record label as kind of in theory. So we did all the recording side of it as part of the course, but then we had to do a bit of a business plan and so on. And I quite enjoyed that side of it and the marketing side. But obviously, fresh out of uni, I was like, right, I'm going to run the record label and do it. And with no money, no experience or anything, and just went absolutely nowhere. But it was good fun. And I was like, right, I quite like the marketing side. So I got a temp job straight away when I sort of moved back home from uni. My auntie worked at a company that basically manufactures glasses for Tesco opticians. So it's kind of like a white label business. So if you were to buy glasses from Tesco opticians, you're buying it from this company called Galaxy at the time. And then, so I sort of went there as a bit of a temp for 2 weeks, just doing a tiny little bit of work, helping with some computer stuff, just to sort of get some pocket money, basically. And I overheard the managing director basically saying that they need some marketing content. They were struggling a little bit. So I was a little bit cheeky and I took some glasses home one night, and with a camera, I filmed a little video with my younger brother at the time, who I think was about 3 or 4 years old, and my mum putting the glasses on him, etc. And I just shot this little video and sort of left it on I'm going to sound old now, but on a CD. So I left it on a CD on the desk and said, thanks for the work the last 2 weeks. Here's a little video. If you want to use it, great. They rang me up the next week and said, basically, do you want a job? And they were like, we don't know what to do with you, but the title, they gave me a title of creative executive, which was basically doing a bit of everything and just trying to learn on the spot. And it was great because there wasn't a big team, so I wasn't out on my depth because anything I learned was more than named already. But then I quickly sort of took a bit of a sidetrack because from there I went to an agency in Manchester called Cheat & Bell JWT. As a social media manager at the time. So this was like 2013. So I'm 32 now, and this was I left uni in 2012. This was like back end of 2013. And what happened there, I went into that role to sort of go more into that marketing, and Cheat & Bell, sort of the Manchester arm of JWT, which is one of the largest ad agencies in the world. So I think at the time there was like 108 offices around the world. So they did some really cool stuff. But at the time I was like, they're all doing these amazing ads and the production teams are coming in and using amazing TV ads. And it's like, here's a screenshot, stick it on the Facebook page. And it was kind of like, there must be a better way. And I'd kind of fallen into social, but I wasn't one of these people that is like you get people now that are really into trends and things like that. I was more bothered, like I was really into like the psychology of it and the marketing side and how do we apply that to social, not just go, oh, that's just because it's social, it doesn't matter. So tell me if I'm marking on here, by the way.
No.
But yeah, so I from there, I actually I only stayed around a year. And then I think I was around 22, 23, and I actually ventured out on my own and set up a company called, at the time, I think I called it Colossal Creative Limited. It was limited business, but it was just me. But what I was doing was basically going into agencies that had traditional teams of art directors, creatives, various people, but they didn't have a social team when it was getting to that sort of those years where social was becoming something that clients were really starting to consider. So I started to offer strategy, basically to people and say, I can tell you what to do, and I can create the content, or you can do it yourself. And then from there, sort of a few years went by, and I actually ended up merging my business in with another agency in Manchester, called Shoot Immune. So I was there for 5 years, and I sort of merged that in as a bit of a department, and then ended up sort of taking on an ops director role there across the group. And my role was very sort of strategic at that time. So very much like we'd pitch strategies to various clients, various brands. I'm not going to just reel them all off, but it's a lot of household names. But we do a lot of that stuff, and it'd be really great. And we'd do the strategy behind it, the paid social strategy. But then what I often found, I was missing the content creation side of it. And I'd sort of worked with various people, and because we did everything, design, content, like all the different mediums, but the only thing we didn't do was we weren't specialists in video. So Cal, who's now my business partner at Dead Pixel, so he used to sort of come in as a freelancer at the time. So we'd work together, and essentially, rather than going to production company, what we did as an agency was I tend to direct a lot of stuff without saying I was a director, because I was just a traditional sort of strategic creative, but I also had the title of ops director. So I was doing things like the P&Ls and HR and things like that for quite a sizable team. I think at the time we'd sort of grown to around 40 people.
Wow.
So it was doing pretty well across we had 3 sort of companies, one in Leeds, sort of 2 around the Manchester area. So it was great, and we were working with some really cool brands, the sort of stuff which when you're at uni, like, I want to work with those brands. But I just felt personally like I'd missed a step, because the company that I joined with had been going 20 years. So there was a lot of things already in place, which I was kind of like, to be honest, I'd rather do things this way. So that's probably a very long-winded answer. But then what happened there was I started to realise with Cal that there was I really like the directing side. I really like the creative side. I wanted to pursue that more. And sort of, I was kind of done with the sort of social side of things. So I joined forces with Cal, basically, and he wanted to get away from being a freelance DOP and kind of filming and going, there's your footage on a hard drive, and not having any involvement in the full project. And my expertise was having that knowledge of marketing. So not directing something because I learned a technique at uni, or because I thought it was a really cool shot or it's really cinematic. A lot of the decisions that I make is often based on knowing strategically what the client's going to do with it. So if they're running a YouTube pre-roll ad, I know that first 5 seconds we need to make sure they're not skipping, because that's where you start to get your return on your investment. So making those creative decisions is actually the way we work is a little bit different to traditional production companies. We joined forces. We started in sort of November 2019 was when we joined together, myself and Carl, and started pushing it, which, as you know, is probably about 3 or 4 months before COVID hit, and Boris said go home. We'd actually just finished the shoot for My Protein. I think it was the 23rd of March, and we finished the shoot, wrapped all the kit up, and then we saw the news to say go home. And we were like, okay, what are we going to do now? But that first year was pretty mental, and then we've been growing quite quickly. So I don't do the sort of strategic side of things anymore, or the marketing side, but I've kind of got 7 or 8 years of experience in that kind of now I've sort of transferred into the production side of things.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting journey, actually, that you've come from like a music background into directing. I love how differently all creatives that I've spoken to have come into their role. They've all come a wiggly way. It's not an academic way. It's a really typical creative, like, let's see what happens, and let's see what works and what sticks. But that's really cool. How did you guys find the pandemic? Were you able to do anything, or you just couldn't do anything at all?
It's tricky, because if I'm being completely honest, I think we at first had like everyone else, but I think in some ways we probably have benefited from it, in the sense that, and just to caveat that, I know it, obviously I would always rather it never happened, so that's not like a really positive thing. But in the first, when obviously they said go home in March, so that's sort of back end of March, April, May, we had no work on. It was, I think everyone was finding their feet. Clients were pausing spends. We just won a pitch to go out to do a commercial for a ski resort. So we were like trying to sort our flights out and go, we're going to go skiing, we're going abroad, it's going to be amazing. It was like, stop, we're not doing it anymore. So everything stopped. So that first 2 months was hard, whilst we were like, right, we're a new business. We don't have months and months of cash flow in the bank to see us through. We'd only started within a certain period before the pandemic that meant that we couldn't qualify for things like furlough scheme. We couldn't furlough ourselves. So that was difficult. And I vividly remember being sat on my sort of the top step of my stairs at home on the phone to Cal, and was probably like, what are we going to do? What are we going? And it's not a sob story; it's just the truth, basically. But we didn't have. I think we barely had enough money to be able to pay rent. I mean, I got the mortgage holiday like everyone else does. I'm quite open about it, and I think I had to have my parents lend me some money to cover 1 month of the mortgage. So we were at that point. But then June hit, and because unlike a lot of production companies, we're not just producers. So obviously we're producing the work, but we're not bringing in freelance director, freelance DOP, freelance art director. So because we are doing the work, clients were suddenly realizing that actually I can brief you in your own home, and you can create stuff. So a lot of the tabletop foodie work that we do, we were doing out of like my kitchen and Cal's bedroom on Zoom calls and things like that. So we could quite quickly start creating content. So June got quite busy, and then from there it kind of started to scale up. And then we started to hire more staff and sort of build the team out. And then since then we've kind of progressed and progressed.
Yeah, I think everybody had a difficult first 3 months. I think I made the decision not to carry on because I'm asthmatic. So I was like, well, I might get it. Turns out I've caught it 3 bloody times anyway. So, could have gone in. But we just made that decision, and it was hard. Like my husband was still working, and he was working for BT at the time. So he was in and out of people's houses, sorting out their internet because they needed to get on with work because they were sent home to work. And it was difficult. We were the same. We took I don't think we took a mortgage break, but I definitely took a break off the credit cards and something else. And just, And then actually when we got, I'm not limited, I'm just self-employed, sole trader. And I got a grant, and then you had the thing with the grant, they sold it to you as like, oh yeah, we're helping everybody, and then you still had to pay 20% on the fucking thing anyway. So I would have been better off getting a loan out and covering my ass that way. But it's I feel like we're now this year, I feel like I've gone in and been like, oh yeah, okay, January, February, March is always a bit quieter while people are sorting their budgets out. We're back to, I feel like they've stopped playing catch up quite so much, like big companies. They're kind of like, right, okay, we're back into the flow of things. But it was difficult. 2020 and into 2021 was weird.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I meant earlier when I was like, I think we benefited in some ways, because I think it was weird, and I think for a lot of people, and probably for the majority, especially companies with big teams, were still struggling. Companies that maybe have the budgets to be able to bring people like yourselves in, where it seemed to be up and down. It's like it's go that it's not, it's go that it's not. Because we were so small and nimble, but we weren't like a startup in the sense that, oh, we've just come out of uni and we're giving it a go. We were actually quite experienced in our fields. I think we looked out a bit there from, and some of it's luck, some of it's the fact that we absolutely grafted putting ourselves in front of people. But essentially in that period, whilst we were trying to build a production company, people were using us like this pair of creatives. Yeah. Me and Carl can just work together and get it done. And once we were kind of allowed to go back into the office, if your work was sort of, if it required it, we can't film something with a model from someone's living room or from my own living room. So we could quickly get back in and sort of put various precautions in place to do it safely, and clients could zoom in remotely and whatever. So we could do things quite nimbly. So in that first sort of going into 2020 to 2021, we did start to get quite a lot of work. And then we're able to start, like I say, start hiring and growing. And then it meant that when a lot of people came out of COVID and we're probably getting to the point where like, right, work's picking up, we'd been doing it for a while. So we already had like a fresh portfolio that wasn't full of people wearing masks and things like that. And it kind of meant that we just kept going at full speed. But I think one of the biggest decisions that we made, which isn't just something that I talk about for necessarily around COVID, but stick by and we do it in sort of other things that we go through, is sticking to our guns a little bit, in the sense that I think a lot of companies, it's different for freelancers or caveat, but for a lot of companies, they sort of really shifted and went, right, okay, let's try and do, we'll edit your Zoom calls or send us your iPhone footage and we'll do this, which for some companies at some levels, and especially in the more B2B markets, that might work really well. For what we're doing, we work in sports, lifestyle and food sectors, and we produce quite high-end social campaign content, TV commercials. If we suddenly start saying to people, we can edit your iPhone videos and do this, it's quite hard to then re-navigate and charge for doing a TV commercial at the rates we normally would.
Yeah.
So we were like, we need to hold out. We need to not say we can do this stuff, because then clients will keep expecting that stuff and say, well, you did it really easy last time. Or you did it on your phone. Do you really need that camera?
Yeah.
So it was hard holding, but now we benefited from it, because the work we did do means that we've got a portfolio again of the higher end work, not a portfolio of iPhone content.
Yeah, I think it's changed some parts of the industry, like you say, and I think some of it's for good, some of it's for bad. And it's, like you say, it's company dependent as well. And I've definitely noticed and chatted to other freelancers that since the pandemic, everything's changed a lot, in the sense that we're booked a lot later. So like, you know, options are coming in on a Thursday, Friday for the next week. You're not being booked like a month in advance. And I do think that's down to COVID and people going, well, you did it 2 years ago for half the price, or, you know, to their production companies and things. So yeah, I do think it has impacted our industry. And it also highlighted how socially, how we navigate through life, and we use an awful lot of creative people's work to chill out, music, looking at artwork, looking at content creators, you know, films, video, Netflix, everything. And I think it really highlighted that actually creatives should be paid their worth. They are also very valid jobs. And, you know, because there's an awful lot,
100%.
People go to me like, oh, stylist, do you mean a hairdresser? I'm like, Jesus, have you seen my hair? Like, no.
No, stylists are worth the weight in gold. They're one of the biggest assets, especially to the stuff that we tend to do anyway with production.
Yeah, it's a weird job, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah. What sort of styling is it that you do?
I'm a still life stylist, so I do still life fashion. I do still life interiors. I do creative still life. Do stuff for lots of different brands, really. But I'm quite broad. Awesome. But I used to do model work, but I'm 35 now, so I'm a bit like, I get a bit too tired. But yeah, it just I just ended up finding that I really enjoyed still life, and then somebody called me and said, so-and-so's recommended you because you really love doing like hanging clothes and still life stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I love it. And they're like, we can't find somebody who actually likes it, so, you know, works out in the end. But
I could definitely see though how, like you're saying, it became a lot harder for maybe people in your position, because as like the production company producing it. So aside from our actual roles on set, when we're getting the briefs in and we're in more like producer business head mode, and we're like, right, how can we make this happen, budgets and everything else, it's difficult. It was difficult coming out of COVID to explain to clients why we needed that extra cost for the stylist, or why we needed this. And they're like, I can just fluff some pillows up, or I can put some plants in the background, and it's not quite the same. No. And that was very difficult. And then it sort of pained us quite a lot to go, well, obviously we need the work, we do the job, but unfortunately the people that we usually sort of maybe bring in as freelancers are probably thinking, are they using someone else? They didn't get me on that job, but it was actually just because we didn't have anyone. half the time I've ended up being director, producer, art director, stylist. I think I was even chefing at one point on a shoot. Not now, because we're in a much better position now.
Yeah.
But at the time when you're trying to get out of that sort of COVID period, it was difficult. And I couldn't imagine being in the freelance position where those budgets are kind of dictated by someone else a little bit. Whereas we just tried to do a big job on educating clients on why they need it, and that production value. We talk about it all the time. That extra money we ask for doesn't go in our pocket. It doesn't mean we make more money, because quite often the amount of production, the filming date's all the same, but actually it goes on screen. That set's quite bland. Actually bring you in or bring someone in and bring a wardrobe stylist in and everything else, then all of a sudden you've got better styling, the colours, some of the notes in the colours of the clothing match the brand cues, all those little bits that start to lift it means you get a much better picture. And that's kind of, I think sometimes it's about for us to educate clients on that. Basically.
Yeah, it's really, sometimes when you're on set, and I'm very much like, I like composition and how things are set out and, how things balance. And I've seen photographers try to style, and I just think, I love yous, but no, get behind the camera.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's a big part of it, actually, as creatives. I think I always say a lot of people, I'm not precious, a lot of people can direct. Many people can direct. My mum could probably direct. She has ideas. Sometimes the difference is being able to communicate things and let people do their jobs properly, rather than, it's the controlling element that I think is where things go wrong. It's thinking, I think this would look really good like that. But when you get into post-production, if the set's all over the place or it's not styled correctly, it's you that's taking the risk on that, and it's you that's going to get sort of saying, well, we're not using her again. So actually, if the responsibility and the accountability is on you, then in those cases, the photographer, the producer if they brought you in, should allow you to do the job. And that's what we're constantly, reminding ourselves on shoots is, it's great in those earlier days where we had to collaborate more because, budgets, whereas now it's like, I'm doing this job. People can have input, but actually it makes everyone's lives easier if it's really clear. Sorry, say that again. Makes everyone's lives easier if it's really clear on what's expected of them.
I think as well, it's managing lots of people's expectations, especially with regards to producing something. It's managing client, what your team can achieve in the time you've been given. And, it's almost bringing some people down and some people up a bit and balancing everybody out, which I think is quite a skill to be able to do that. Yeah,
I'm a big one I make a lot of analogies all the time, and I always use restaurant analogies. And if you go into a restaurant as a client and you order a meal, you can't suddenly be like, well, actually their meal looks better, I want that one as well, or I want it like that. If you can only afford a starter, then you can't have 3 courses. As obvious and simple and as corny as that sounds, it's exactly the same with this. We're providing a service, clients are paying for that service. They might have seen something else that they like. They might have said to us at times, we want this John Lewis ad, or we want this M&S ad we get all the time because of all the foodie work we do. But if the client can't afford the ingredients for that, which is the skills and the creatives to make it happen, then sometimes we can't. And I think that's what's difficult, because as a creative, you always want to do a bit better. You always want to move that thing. You always want to add more in. But you've got to remember that if that impacts the next shot and the time runs away, the client's not paying for that. And that's why you initially asked for a 3-day shoot and it got crushed down to a 1-day shoot.
Yeah. And we've all been there where a 2 or 3 day shoot is crushed into 1 day, and you're on the Red Bull, there's drum and bass music going, and you're like, and everyone's buzzing,
Yeah.
And it's managing everybody's expectations, really. And then, like you say, just sheer communication, isn't it, really? Because some of us creatives aren't as good at communicating because our brains go off on loads of tangents all the time, me included, and you just end up pinging off the walls, getting loads of ideas, and then forget to communicate what you're doing. And that's
exactly.
It's definitely a skill that I have to often think you need to just say, do that, Shah, and I talk to myself like while I'm on set.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to be like, it's not easy. Like, I learned the hard way to be a sucker for that, like messing around with Cal's lighting. Cal's amazing at lighting something, but a lot of like most creative processes, it's a layering effect. You know, you move this, you add that, right, that's not quite right, I'm going to add this. So someone like Carl, if he's lighting a set, has got the end vision in his mind. So he doesn't need to explain to me why he's put the C stand there and he's going to ping this light through this window and put it off this bounce board. But if I go, it's looking a bit dark, I'm just going to move this light halfway through his process. That's unfair. So, and I have in the past been, we could try this, but then I've got to remember that's not necessarily what I'm here to do. And actually, he's working through that in his way that works for him. So what I'll do is I'll wait till we get to the finished thing and we look at the monitor and he says, what do you think? And then it's my time for some input.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Like you see people's creative process and it is a layer. Like I'm thinking when it's like a bedroom set for me and you're like, right, you've got the bed on, you're putting the bedding on, but then your bedding's not perfect for another 20 minutes while you're fiddling about with other bits. And then you're like, right, I'll come back to that bit and come back to that bit. And it's definitely, that's the right, it is a layering thing. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But it's funny because I think with obviously technology's changed a lot now. So where clients that maybe normally would be spending, 200 grand on TV commercials, and those are the only ones that ever get in front of some of the high end kit, we're now doing shoots for say 15, 20 grand that have got some really high end equipment on there. And we own a Red Gemini cinema camera as well, which is quite a high end camera. So having that on set. So the clients, those sort of clients that are maybe new to those spending those sorts of budgets, they're the ones that are used to being on a set with maybe an internal content creator that's got maybe a little gimbal or like doing stuff on their iPhone, and these are just rattling through stuff because they're not a crew, they're not thinking about the lighting, the composition, they're just getting content. Yeah. So then when they sort of, I don't want to say step up because it's different, it's not necessarily better, it's just a different sort of content. But when they sort of step to more into production, sort of away from say videography, and it comes more into that, right, there's more roles here, it's sometimes I think difficult for clients to understand that actually this feels really slow, but it's not because these guys aren't as good, it's because actually they're crafting something. It's not just like run and gun, capture what you can.
How have you found social media has changed your job? Because obviously you've done social media as a job. Are you finding you're doing a lot more for the likes of Instagram, TikTok and brands like that side now as well?
Yeah, 100%. We've not really done anything for TikTok. We've had a couple of little projects and briefs come in, but to be honest, I know a couple of people. I know the one of my good friends is the sort of head of fashion at TikTok that does a lot of consultancy for brands as well, and even they'll tell you the high end content, shot on high res cameras, it doesn't work. Like it's built for that UGC style, so we don't get asked for that a lot. But Instagram definitely. Most of our content tends to be Instagram, YouTube, whether that's YouTube pre-roll or video on demand as well is quite a big one. We do TV commercials, but they're not every week. And a lot of the stuff we do is centered around. I think Instagram's one of the main ones because it's the ones where you can push that creativity, you can push that quality, and it not be out of place. I think some clients might put some stuff out on Facebook, especially on the paid social side of things. We do a lot for MyProtein, and obviously they have a lot of paid social activity, and MyVegan. But the Instagram's the biggest one.
Yeah, I've definitely found that with my work, a lot of it goes on Instagram stories now. And then if you are not following the brand or you've not seen that it's come up, you've missed it and it's gone. Yeah. I do think it's changed it an awful lot.
Yeah, it has, because then you're in a trade-off, because if there's a phrase I get all the time from clients, which can be, we don't need to spend that much, it's only going on Instagram stories. But it's not like we would just turn the quality of the camera down. Yeah. So the resolution of it is irrelevant. Sometimes you'll see something, we don't need that, but it's actually, okay, you might not want to put as much production value into it. But actually, there's still a cost involved, because if you want models, we're still going to pay those models usage and licensing for social. Yeah. So we still have to do that. We're not going to go, it's just for Instagram. Yeah, they'll do it for free. It doesn't work like that. So there are some shoots where, we have our little black book of mates that we would go to and say, we've worked with these models a lot. This is the budget, not trying to chip anyone down, but it's more a case of, do you want it? But most of the times we'd rather go through the proper channels and work with the agents that can sort of put the casting portfolios to us, and we can say this is the look we want. But I think sometimes with a lot of things being social first and a lot of our work being that sort of campaigns and social campaigns, there is sometimes consideration from the clients anyway, from trying to sort of reduce budgets because it might only be going on stories. But it's just not, it's something we try and just push back against, because they can use that content further down the line. They can use it in other areas. So you don't want to start doing it and shooting it in a 9:16 crop. So we get asked that from time to time, but because our cameras are 5K resolution, we can take a 9:16 crop without losing any resolution. Yeah. Whereas when you used to shoot in HD and it was 1920 by 1080 pixels, if you took the middle out, you'd basically be stretching it up. So we don't necessarily need to do that and limit it. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding it really interesting, because I feel like social media is just like kicked off massively. But then like when my mates were at uni, probably similar to you, Facebook was only just becoming a thing. And now it's like a place where everyone argues on the community Facebook pages, and it's full of like grandmas. Yeah. And like it's weird how its evolution is like happening literally in front of our eyes and changing across, and how the brands are reacting so quickly to it as well. Like all these big brands, big supermarkets have got their own TikToks, you know, they're all posting and stuff on their Instagrams, then they're changing stuff up, and it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, 100%. Do you know what? One thing that I've really seen a rise of is like what we would call branded content, but longer form branded content, which is weird because for social, everything kind of went right, short form, quick and dirty. But we're seeing that we're getting asked for a lot of stuff now where there is a bit more production value, but it's kind of like I can't think of another way to put it other than a mini Netflix series, but for the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And we've done a few projects where we did one working with an agency from down south that kind of brought the concept to us, and then we did all the production on it, where it was for a brand, but their target audience was petrol heads essentially. So we took a UK racing driver from England. He was a bit of a YouTuber influencer. Took him to various countries. So we went to Sicily in Italy. We went to Sweden in like -10. We went to Norway, went to Ireland, and we basically took him to all these countries and filmed. And it was like day one, he has to learn their grassroots way of racing. And then day two, he has to enter a race and we film it. And it's a bit of a Louis Theroux meets Top Gear kind of thing. But every country we've been to, we maybe captured 2 to 3 episodes, and then they're like 5 to 10 minutes long, and they sit on their YouTube channel. They don't once show the brand. They don't talk about the brand. He might have a bit of branding on his race suit or in his helmet, but it's actually just funny long form content to keep the target audience engaged and sort of keep them interested in that brand awareness sort of front of mind. And we're seeing a lot more of that now, where people want to do various like little comedy skits of we've done Chunks, who's like a famous YouTuber. We've done him flipping pancakes for My Protein. We've done various things where we're teaching people how to cook. We recently did something with Tom Kerridge. So those sort of educational, funny, entertaining pieces seem to be getting more popular, as well as the little short pieces of content.
Yeah, I definitely think as well, people want to, maybe it's during the pandemic as well, people wanted some light entertainment, and I feel like comedy came out a lot. TikTok, for me, I was like looking at just normal people being funny, and I think it just lifts you. And I definitely see it. My husband watches a lot of YouTube. We both do, really, and you definitely see a lot more subtle branding. It's just a little bit. But then also, when I'm looking at social content creators and influencers who I've actually styled with and managed many moons ago, and now they've got 200,000 followers and what have you, and the way their life has changed and the way their work has changed is incredible. It's now like they're being sponsored by Amazon or big drinks brands or what have you, and but I'm not sure I like the advertising like that, where it's like where influencers are just churning out adverts. I find that a bit too much. I'm like, give me a bit of your life, and then if someone asks where your top's from, sling them a link. It's finding that balance. I think there's a balance there, but it's finding it.
Yeah, And I think it's funny because earlier when you were saying about that, how socials change and everyone's experiences of it, when it was those sort of 2013, 2014, and I was sort of really getting into Facebook from a work sense, using it from personal sense, but it's like, yeah, it's your auntie having a kick off and things like that. And then I got to the point where I'd spent so much time in like the ads managers, I'd spent so much time on various pages and stuff that for a period of time I really wanted to delete my channels. And it's not because I'm not one of these people that like they shouldn't exist and they're bad. I think there's a lot of good things that can be done through, especially connecting people and educating people and things like that. I've spent countless hours on social channels and I've picked stuff up and ideas, and I think it does influence the way we work. But personally, I just realized I was wasting a lot of time. And when I didn't need it from a work sense, I just kind of didn't really have any desire to use the channels, but I just find myself scrolling. So I wanted to delete them. But then I didn't, I think I deleted Instagram for a little bit and then downloaded it again like years ago. But interestingly enough, now I hardly ever use Facebook. Yeah. I only keep it so that I can every now and then have a look at a few things, but I don't really use it. The only platforms I think I go on now is Instagram and LinkedIn. And LinkedIn for me used to be this, like, as a creative, it's this corporate thing that you think like, I don't want to use it. I use LinkedIn now more than any other app on my phone.
Oh, really? That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
Without a doubt. Sorry.
Oh no, because I use Instagram the most for like this, my podcast Instagram, and then my work as a bit of a portfolio, and then I've got a private one that's more like connections, friends, and stuff. And then I dip in and out of LinkedIn. I found that hard work. I've not got enough back out of it.
Keep going.
Do you think?
Keep going, 100%. So I would. It goes up and down. I would hazard a guess that 65% of our work as a company comes through Carl's or my LinkedIn.
Wow.
Yeah, 100 definitely. But I think when I say that, and the reason I'm sort of deliberating as I'm thinking is because some of that might have come from a client through a LinkedIn conversation a year ago, and then they'd moved somewhere else and they're still coming back to us. So not necessarily every project, but we got so busy after COVID that, and this is generally because I've got quite a bit of experience in the new business side of things and the pitching and finding the work, and we did a lot of that, and I was really for it. And then we got so busy that we were like, I personally struggle to switch off at times. So I didn't. What was I going to say then? Yeah, so I didn't even. I've completely lost my train of thought.
You were talking about LinkedIn and people coming back to you.
That was it. Yeah. So I snipped that bit. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn and as sort of hounding people, having those conversations. And then we got to a point where we were so busy and I couldn't really switch off from the work that we kind of stopped driving new business, and it was just like incoming work. And that was through the website, through social. We were, do you know, Heck Food, like Heck sausages and stuff? Like we got them just through a DM on Instagram, and we were like getting projects everywhere. But then because we were so busy for maybe a year, and I don't think I did one cold email or cold call in that year, that then the year after we started to feel the effects of that because we hadn't been as present. So we both started to ramp up LinkedIn again, and it's just, it's been sort of paying dividends in terms of connections, conversations. Oh, I saw this that you did. Can you do this for us?
Yeah, I've found it. Maybe it's some of the connections I've got in there as well, but I've only had a handful of jobs out of it over the past maybe 5 years. I've had more probably out of Instagram.
Yeah, which I'd probably guess based on the line of work that you do.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's very stylish visual platform. If those are your sort of your echo chambers that you're in and people are into the sort of stuff you do, I think for us, people quite often don't come to us because they want a certain look or they want something really stylish. They come to us because they need a video that's going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so it's slightly different because we don't sell video. We're not the sort of company that's like, did you know video can increase your leads by it? Because we don't do that sort of work. So usually it's got, there might be an in-house brand team, brand manager, marketing director, whatever it is. They already know they need a video. They know what they want. They know when they need it because they've got a whole marketing campaign and strategy. But they just need someone that can technically make it happen and creatively do what the idea is that's in their head, or come up with the idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tend to find that we have business conversations first in terms of our sort of rates, what we cost, how we work, what the process is. Do we get on with them? Is there that chemistry there? And sort of those kind of conversations really. And then we kind of get into, okay, all the creative stuff, because I think people tend to come to us, and without sounding arrogant, it's a given that we should be able to do something visually impressive and creative. Just like if they went to any of our competitors, they should be able to get something like that. But it's not a given that we'll be easy to work with.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think a lot of business as well is that you're nice when you're on set. You're like, I don't know, chatty, helpful,
Yeah.
or, and you're nice to work with. And I think that's half the battle, if not more.
100%. Yeah. And that's something that we, like when I say we all the time, I'm sort of myself and Cal, when we have meetings where we're trying to work on the business, not in the business, in terms of how we are and processes, we constantly are talking about things like that and how we can be more fun. And as corny as that sounds, like realistically, and you'll know this, most clients that are sort of paying for the video or paying for the still shoot, because we do stills as well sometimes, most clients that are paying for that, they're not on a shoot every day.
Yeah.
This is like the highlight of their working year. And the back of my head must be on a million people's camera rolls because they're getting the phones out, they're doing all these different stuff. So, and like, that's how it should be. Like, it shouldn't be stressful. It shouldn't be like, oh, this is, I don't know, where's this, where's that. So we take all that away, and they should be having fun and paying for not just the content, but that experience. And I think a lot of people, a lot of creators, I think, can take that for granted because we do it every day. And it's like, oh, I've got this other one and I've got to shoot next week. But no, we take a lot of time to, even talk about what Spotify, like, hang on guys, before we even press record, what's the Spotify playlist?
Yeah.
Like, what are we putting on? And I think that just makes it more fun for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And like, well, you never would have guessed it because I'm running a podcast now, but I'm quite chatty on set and I like to have a little bit of a chat and find out like who people are, and like you say, like Spotify playlist. And I think it just, like you say, we do take it for granted because we're on set all the time, and you're like, oh great. For me, it's like not the picture of the back of my head, it's normally a picture of my arse where I'm bent over trying to set something and someone's taken a shot. And I think we do take it for granted because we're like, right, okay, we're thinking of this job, and then next week I've got 20 other different things going on. And these people are like maybe buyers who are sat in the office quite a lot, or they're not ever seen this production level before. So it must be, you're right, from their point of view, it must be pretty cool to come and see it. And we're just numb to it because we're like, well, doing it 15, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah. And you're right, because, buyers have probably been working on that line or those SKUs for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, probably longer. So they're like, the fact that they were planning those items or those pieces of clothing, for example, and now they're in front of them and going on camera, that's quite an exciting, like that's the pinnacle of that project for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, trying to make that as fun as we can. And I think one thing for us as well is we do have, sexy toys. We do a lot of shoots with a certain camera. It's called Phantom VO. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So for people that don't, it's a slow motion camera, high speed, 1,000 frames a second. I think Cal's more technical than me, but I think it's about 40 times slower than real life. So, you film about 6 seconds of footage and it's 3 minutes, 45 seconds when you play it back. So it's really, really cool. You see perspectives that you don't see with your normal eye. Mm-hmm. So as soon as people see that on the monitor, they're like, whoa, can we play it again?
Yeah.
So we have to try and navigate the day in knowing, oh, okay, they're going to want to play this back. They're going to want to get the phones out, but we don't want to lose an hour. So let's get these shots, but then let's maybe have a minute and show them 5 in a row and go through it all and plan a bit of time for that, because we want everyone to enjoy it and have a look. But equally, like, time's money when you're on set.
Yeah, 100%. The only reason, by the way, I know about the Phantom camera is the slow-mo guys on YouTube.
Yeah.
Nath absolutely loves them, my other half, and we went for a phase of watching them all the time, and we'd be like, whoa, they're on a trampoline and they've put powder paint on, and they get one of them to jump on it, and you just see the powder paint go up and down, and it's incredible.
It's nuts. It is incredible, and we're quite lucky that we get to play with it regularly. We actually did last week. There's a charity in Manchester called it's like a not-for-profit charity called the Reporters Academy, and they basically help people that are maybe in careers and jobs that they don't want to be in, or they're fresh out of uni and they're at a bit of a loss end. They kind of help them get into the industry. So we did like a charity workshop day where we got them in, got all the kit out, and sort of showed them how it works on set and the cameras, and let them have a go. And so on that particular day, because we had a couple of stations, I was looking after the Phantom, so I was sort of letting them play with it, showing them how to use it. And it's £100,000 camera, so when they'd ever touched that at those sort of ages, and I don't really know. So it's a great experience, but we do take it for granted a bit. But it's amazing what you can do with it once you understand it. And it's not quite as complex as you think. Once you get your head around the sort of parameters of it.
Yeah, it just looks... It's the same as retouching for me. I look at stuff and that's out of my knowledge realm, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like a little kid at the sweet shop. Like, this is amazing. And it just looks great.
Yeah, it is cool. And for like anyone interested, without getting too technical, I always find that's really, really cool is because it films, your eye naturally sees at 25 frames a second. It's not quite an exact science, but it's about 25 frames a second. So when someone slows footage down, if you half speed footage, you're then playing it back at 12.5 frames a second. So because your eye's missing gaps because it sees at 25, that's why it gets jittery if you get normal footage and slow it down. So to be able to go that slow, you film 1,000 frames a second and then you slow it right down and you can still go down to 25, if that makes sense.
Wow.
So this is where it gets cooler though. This is where it blows my mind, is for the camera to record 1,000 frames a second, each frame essentially is a picture. So that video camera is taking 1,000 pictures every second, which means the sensor inside the camera is opening and closing 1,000 times every second, which then also means that no light gets in the camera because it's always like opening and closing. So when we use it, and if anyone ever looks at our like social channels and our website, we always share a lot of behind the scenes, and you'll see a lot of light. And that's because if we just turn it on in a normal room, like where you're filming your podcast now, it'd be pitch black. So you need like excess amount of light to be able to just light a can basically in front of the lens, because it's so dark. And that's why it's not very easy. People don't use it on every production because you can't just whip it out and turn it on and go, right, record like you can with other cameras. But if you know how to use it all, I mean, some people do some stuff where there's that much light that they have to install heat extraction that pulls the heat out. So we've had rubber clamps on a stand holding a can that started to smoke because of the heat.
Yeah. Because you're under consistent lighting, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So flash doesn't work for it or for most filming. But the thing is, a lot of like our aperture lights and things like that are LED anyway, so they don't give off heat. But for those shoots, we tend to hire in like M18s, M25s, which are like big. They're kind of like the ones you see in Hollywood with the big frames around them and things like that. So they're really, really like, I think they're about 15 grand to buy one of these lights. So we hire them in, very, very, very powerful, thousands and thousands of watts. But yeah, we've been like sweating. If we're doing a Phantom shoot, which is quite regularly, we'll say, right, I'm definitely wearing shorts and t-shirt. Like I'm bringing my sunglasses.
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely seen the guys filming while I've been at a different studio, and I've been doing stills and they've been doing an advert, and you just see everyone in shorts and then Foodex in like sunglasses or whatever. And just, I work under some of the consistent light in one of the fashion places, and like I feel like I have to put sun cream on. Like they're just so hot, and heaven forbid if you wear jeans and a hoodie, because you'll be melting within about 10 minutes.
But this is where and this isn't a shameless plug, but this is where like our expertise come into things that we try and explain to people, is why it's not really easy to just shoot food. Because things like, if we're planning a certain shot and it's got an apple in it, we all know you leave an apple on the side in a kitchen for half an hour, it oxidizes and starts to go a bit brown. Whereas put that under big lights, that speeds up. So you start to have to think about those things like, okay, we're doing this shot, refreshing, ice, gate. Well, the ice is going to melt as soon as we put it on set. So we have to build it elsewhere and bring it in. There's various other things to think about. And that's quite often is where my role will come in when, if I'm directing something, yes, there might not be an actor to sort of direct and their actions and the dialogue, and there might not be any movement. But actually, is this shot and shot in this way technically going to work? Is it then going to fit in the edit the way we've planned it to? So there's lots of things to think about, as well as the styling, the cameras, the lights, the food, art department, and everything else.
Yeah, the amount of food I've seen that's been built elsewhere, and then turkeys have been run across the studios and stuff, and just food styling's a whole different ball game. Again, that's another thing that absolutely fascinates me. I could stand and watch a food stylist all day and not have an issue and just be like, oh, this is amazing, it's just incredible.
I know it's funny because when you said before about when you say people stylists, like, oh, do you do hair? It's funny when we just talk about the job sometimes, and you get like relatives or people that don't work in the industry, and they go, food stylist, what I can cook for you, like, what do they do? But if anyone's ever taken a picture on their iPhone of the meal, and then you compare to something you see like on a 48 sheet on a billboard or something, you'll know exactly what the difference is. And it's like, there's only so much that a camera and lights and the shot and the directing can do, but the food itself, you're like, why doesn't mine look like that? But the stuff that they can do is amazing. And people do always say, oh, is it true that they put glue and they do this and they do that? And it used to be more so years ago, especially in still life, because if you shoot in stills, you can get away with it more. Whereas if we're shooting video and there's movement in that, or someone's got to pretend to eat it, or that, it's much harder. So we tend to very rarely, like 99% of the time, all the food is, there's things we do to it to make it look better if it's been sat dry for 10 minutes and make it look a bit more glistening, but none of it's fake. We don't really put, like, some people put WD-40 on turkeys to shine them up a bit and stuff, and we don't do that.
No. I think there is certain tips and tricks, obviously, for, like you say, with stills. I've definitely been on set where the cereal is in PVA glue because it's just gonna crumble under milk for 10 minutes while you're waiting for approval. But there is you do definitely see a lot of tips and tricks that I wouldn't even think of, and I would have thought of being a creative as well. But there's so many things I've seen. I've seen somebody heat up the cheese off a pizza, like mozzarella, with a steamer just to get the pull shot, and it's crazy.
But it's knowing as well, which you start to pick up as you work, like what cheeses work, what doesn't. Like vegan cheese is the best cheese to get a pull.
Yeah.
I can't 100% tell you why, but I just know from the amount of times I've done shoots with cheese, vegan cheese pulls way better than normal cheese.
Yeah.
But the kind of like one of the cool little tricks that I could probably tell you that you're like, what? And people never know, but it's so simple, is in terms of getting steam from like a coffee cup, for example. Obviously, as soon as that's on set, it's going to go cold in a few minutes. You're not going to get your steam. So the way to get really good steam for stills and for video is to use a tampon.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Yeah. And I've seen it in use as well. And there's always, I mean, being a woman anyway, there's lots of sanitary products in my kit. But often a food deck will be like, "Oh, have you got a tampon?" I'm like, "Yeah, here you go."
Yeah. And just for anyone that might be listening, that's like, "What do they do with a tampon?" we tend to like. From when we've done it anyway, if we dip it in water and wrap it in cling film and sort of microwave it for a few seconds, when you open that cling film, you just get really good white steam. So you put that behind the cup and it just looks really nice and thick, especially if your set's quite light. If it's dark, it's easier. If your set's light, then it's harder to pick up the actual steam on camera. But it's better if you do use a tampon. So I think we actually did that about 3 weeks ago for a cup of soup advert.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when stuff like that happens, it's the same. Like speaking to my family, they go like, "You've done what?"
Yeah.
That pretty shot wasn't. It's all smoke and mirrors.
But that's the thing with, well, probably most creative things, but especially in production, I think that's one of the things I love about this job is I kind of get to do so many wacky stuff, so many like weird things, and try other people's jobs half the time because you're filming them, and it's absolutely crazy. Like not too long ago, we just shot a commercial for a gin company, and we had Fred Siriax, so off First Dates, and I literally had him naked in a bath full of grapes. It was like the gin's made from grapes, so it was a bit of like a sort of there's a bit of a twist on a few things, but we were like trying to work out this, like grapes don't float in a bath, so we actually worked out like the bath salt to water ratio that would thicken it to make the grapes float. But then we realised that's going to take too much time, so we ended up filling the bath with what's it called, like bubble wrap, and then we put a bit of cardboard across, and then got 30 kilos of grapes on the top and covered him in grapes.
Wow.
So like that was a funny one because I'm like, Sarah, our producer's ringing round, like trying to find somewhere in London that's near where we were shooting at the time to like, can you deliver 30 kilos of grapes? They're like, why? She's like, you won't believe me if I tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's like it's so bizarre, our job. Like having to, some jobs I've been styling dogs and then cats, and then I've had a cat like run off set where you think the set's like shut in, and the cat snuck off somewhere and it just doesn't want to be on set. It couldn't give less of a fuck, and it's run off behind loads of other like set build bits, and you're like trying to drag a cat out by its tail, and people go like, what do you mean you style cats? And you're like, yeah, you know, yeah.
Animals are fun ones. Like so many people say, don't work with kids and animals. I love it because it's always funny. Not on the day, like it's usually quite stressful, but I deal with it. But it's always funny when we cast animals, and they usually come with a handler. And sometimes you're like, okay, sometimes I'm like, what does this handler do? Because this animal ain't listening to anyone. Like it's not even its owner. You're like, I feel like you've just met in the car park. Because there's definitely no connection here, and that cat is not listening to you at all. And they charge usage for cats and dogs, and it's like it's mental. But usually they come and they're really good and they can do exactly what we ask.
Yeah, I've had a couple of road dogs, but I'm a dog lover anyway. But I definitely have had some people who are like experts in training their dogs, and then some people who are just a normal owner, and they're like, my dog looks pretty and hopefully it'll sit.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I've had, what's the weirdest one we've had? We had parrots.
Okay, cool.
Dogs, cats. I've had a parrot take like a seed out of my mouth, which was a bit weird. Like the guy that like was the parrot handler, he kind of put a seed and was like, put that in your lips, and then the parrot just like came over and just took it out of my mouth with his beak.
Whoa.
And then told me I was a good girl, apparently. So I was like, parrots are crazy. I think the only other mad encounter with an animal is I've had a lion slash the tyres on my car.
A lion?
Yep. We did a shoot for Knowsley Safari Park.
Yeah.
And everything was like really cool. So we were on the back of like pickup trucks out in the open, like where the normal people can't go, like getting really close to animals. And it was all very safe, and we had the rangers, and it was amazing. And then on one of the days we'd gone into, I don't know if you've been to Knowsley before, but everything's quite open. It's a safari park. Like they're not in cages. It's all like open land. You drive through it. But there's one area for obvious reasons that the lions are like, it's a big open sort of woodland bit, but it's enclosed. So you have to drive through with your windows up, and the lions can't get out of that area. And obviously they'll just eat you if they get in your car. So it's like, you've got to keep your windows up. So we were getting this shot, and what we wanted to do was have that real juxtaposition of this young little girl that was like at the window, but the lion's on the other side of the window, just like facing off, and being like, this is how close you get. So we cast this talent, and because it was obviously in a tiny car, we had sort of DOP. I think Cal was actually on holiday that day, so we had one of our sort of freelance crew as a DOP. So he's in the car with the camera. We actually went in my car, so I'm driving it, so I can sort of offer some direction. And then we had this young girl, I think she was about 7, on her dad's knee in the front seat. And the idea was, over the shoulder, we get this shot as she's like looking out, going, wow, and the lion's coming up to the car. So we go in this pen, the rangers are around us, and they're like, absolutely fine. They've been fed, like no problems. But the shot wasn't quite working. So I radioed the ranger to say, am I okay to just go off the road a touch, literally like a meter onto the grass so I can get a better angle? And they're like, yeah, you're fine. So we did that, and they started sort of like, they were all right. And then a few minutes in, they started like circling the car. And he was like, they're eyeing you up a bit, but you're fine, I'm here. And then the ranger kind of just went for a bit of a drive around. And then this lion was just looking at the car and like, cool, we're getting a shot, it's amazing. And then out of nowhere, just took one big swipe with his claw, just one swipe, and my car just went, and like basically ripped the front left wheel of my car wide open. And I was like, oh. And then the other one went behind my car, so I couldn't reverse. And then the big one, which had the big lion's mane, which I think is like the big male, he basically got on the bonnet and was like looking at me with two paws on the bonnet. Yeah. And so we're radioing the ranger, and they're like, basically get out, like go, drive off if you can. And it wasn't like, they sort of saying later, I think if we were in like a real danger, they did sort of come in and sort of stuff. And he drove in, and they kind of scared him away eventually. But what he said was, they obviously realised that my car's not one they usually see, and they're like, oh, there could be food in there. So they're trying to basically strand my car so that we can't get out, and then might be food in it eventually. So I had to drive out with my car going like basically because I'd like the tire was popped. And then Freya, who was one of our sort of producers, I said like, look, we've got some more shots to get in the rhino bit, but we've already done it all. So we know the kind of like the fine, it's where all the families drive around. It's part of like the tourism area. So there shouldn't be any issues. Can I borrow your car? And like we had insurance was all fine. So we said, right, yeah, you can drive my car, no issues. So we parked mine up. I sort of phoned a company to just come and fit a new tire on site, and we carried on filming. So we went out in Freya's car, and then a rhino decided to sort of itch his horn on the side of Freya's car. Yeah,
oh,
so then
shit.
the car, we're in the car, and the car's like rocking side to side, and I'm like, whoa! And then the guy again, he's on the radio, being like, yeah, they just took a liking to it, so can you just drive on? So we had to drive around and sort of drive out and assess it, but it wasn't too bad. But that's probably like the worst one. But we weren't really in danger. It was funny at the time, like. And we carried on and we got everything we needed. But it's definitely like, I kept the tire, it's in my garage. I'm like, it's definitely a cool experience.
Yeah, that's insane. I don't know whether I'd have shat my pants a little bit if a lion was on the bonnet looking at me.
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit of me that was like, yeah, I probably would have squealed if I was on my own. But I think because we had the young girl in the car as well, my first thought was, if I panic, she's going to panic. So we just tried to get out, and you could sort of tell. I think they weren't being aggressive. So they were just, because they'd lick the tire a couple of times in their little swipe. And then, let's say the line that did it, she wasn't kicking off. She was just like, oh, okay, I'll pop your tire. But it's just like, whoa, this is like, yeah, it was funny. But I definitely wouldn't be probably jumping back in there anytime soon.
Yeah. Man, what an experience. What a working day that was.
Yeah, that was, it was pretty mental. In fact, I think on your podcast not so long ago, I think you spoke to Jen Spence.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like hush, just cut this bit out. But yes, Jen was actually on that shoot with us as well.
Oh, was she? Oh, yeah. I've spoken to her recently, actually. So hers will come out before your one. So, but cool. Yeah, oh, that's mad. That's mad.
Yeah, that was nuts. We get to some cool places, and I think that's what I love about this industry, and not just my role, but I think any creatives, because there's a lot of creatives doing different things that would be on that set with us, is that you do get to go to different places and try different things. But that only comes if you work at it. Like, we've made a decision not to do certain types of work. Some people do some amazing corporate jobs and talking heads, and it's great. It's just that's not what we've built our portfolio around. So we focus on sports, lifestyle, food. It's what we're good at. It's what we've got the kit for. It's what we enjoy. And so we then get more of that work.
Yeah, I think I'm similar in that sense. Like, I can style models, I just don't anymore. I like almost still life stuff, and you find your niche. And I think that's part of being a creative as well, you try everything and then you go, actually that's not quite for me, or I'll take a part of that but I won't take all of that. And that's where you find your niche. And then people, like we were saying earlier, people ring you and go, I know you're ace at sports like videos,
Yeah.
can we have you? And then you've found your niche, and that's the best thing, really.
100%. I actually had someone I met recently that I had a really good chat with, another creative, and she put something on LinkedIn a few days later about like advice for like junior creatives on should they, if they're like, I like doing this and I like doing this and I like a bit of design, I like a bit of photography, for example, and like, should we niche or should we like do a bit of everything? And I sort of replied, and my answer was, I think try a bit of everything in terms of the skills that you want to utilize, but niche in terms of where you want to apply those skills. So if you want to do you know what, I'm going to try a bit of design, I'm going to try a bit of styling and start to find where your flow is. But I would always sort of say, I think, or from my experience, it works better when you do that within a certain area rather than trying to do that in fashion, sports, corporate, medical, like in every area. Because then when you're on different sets so much, you're not picking things up. We pick all those tips up. Sorry, we pick all those foodie tips up because we spend so much time on foodie sets, which means we get stuff done quicker, which means clients see more value when they pay us. Whereas if I did one foodie shoot every 3 or 4 months, I wouldn't have the same knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. It's that's really good advice, really. I did like a lot of fashion and a lot of fashion still life. And then that's where now I know how fabrics work. So then it went into interiors because a lot of it's like bedding or cushions and fabrics again. So it kind of like flows back onto itself. And you're completely right. If you don't do something for a long time, you kind of, well, you don't forget it if you've been doing it a long time, but if you've new to something, you need to see all the nuances between things to
Yeah.
pick up on it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Because I think also as well, there are times where you are collaborating a bit more, maybe called upon, if you're on set and there's 3 or 4 people and it might be that the photographer's just, he's a bit ill that day or something and gone and actually because you've been on so many shoots and worked around those people, so you go, I can help with that. And you just have to sort of muck in a little bit. Whereas if you sort of try in everything in every industry, you're not picking up those skills to be as useful as a team player.
Yeah. And I think on set as well, we, for sure, when we're on locations and stuff, everyone chips in. It's not just the assistant's job to get everything off the van, it's everyone chips in and everyone's a team player. And that's what I really like about being a creative. Everybody's really friendly, really happy to help. And like myself, I've got a chronic illness. So if I'm having a slight off day, people who I've worked with for a long time go like, you're all right. I know you're all right, but like, I'll give you a hand, or, do you just need 5 minutes? And I think that makes your whole experience better and your day better. And you feel like you're a part of that big team.
100%. 100%. I think we're not like, as creatives, whilst it's a great industry, we have to remember we're not curing cancer. So actually, like our jobs aren't like, there are more important things out there, and especially than our own egos. So we're paid. Yes, we have our sort of things that we do on the day, but realistically, we're all paid for the same thing, which is to create this visual output. And as long as that visual output's right, it doesn't matter. And that's not contradicting what we were saying earlier about like, photographer doing your bit and vice versa. Like, we should be able to do the bits we're accountable for. But I think being able to collaborate and not be like, do you know what, that person's a bit off today and I'm working way harder. Like, it doesn't matter. It swings and rounds, but it'll come back around. As long as we get the image done or we get the video done and we do it to what we planned, like, it shouldn't really matter because we're all there to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And a friend of mine years ago, a copywriter, said to me, I was stressing over a t-shirt on a mannequin, and she was like, mate, it's a t-shirt. It's fine. It's like not the most urgent thing in the world. You've not got someone's brains hanging out, like, it's just a t-shirt. And I think sometimes as creatives, we get so wrapped up in like our visions and it's so exciting and it can really like give you a buzz. And actually, like, sometimes it's good to just take that breath and just be like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's get cracking and try not to stress too much.
100%, I agree. I think that's why I always think as well, like especially when people are starting businesses, like having business partners is a big help. Like with me and Kyle, where we're very very different, but we share a lot of the same ideologies on things and how things work, and that's what helps. Like I was actually diagnosed about 3 weeks ago with ADHD,
Oh,
which
okay.
is something looking back now, and various things that I've clearly had my whole life. Um, and I was diagnosed with OCD last year and ADHD 3 weeks ago. So a lot for a different time. But my point was, I'm quite like, it helps me in some ways, like a lot of ways within work, in terms of, especially on the producing side, like I get a lot done and my attention to detail is like high because I'm like, it has to be right. And it's a good balance. But what I sometimes will struggle with, where you're right, if it's just that little crease or it's just that little bit of a t-shirt, moving on from it, because in the grand scheme of things, if we sort of finesse over this too much, we're not going to get the rest done. That's where I used to be like not great at, whereas Cal balances me out on the other side, because Cal's probably a little bit more for those things laid back. So, and it's actually, well, do you know what? Let's just rationalize it. So we kind of both bring traits to each other, I think, and balance it out, and actually leaning on it, not being like, no, this is on me and it's my decision. Actually, we wear many hats, we cross roles a little bit, and we help each other out. And I think having that balance means that then when we're on set, we're also used to having the balance with other people and sort of getting input from other people, and not just being like, it has to be done this way, which I'm getting much better at now. But yeah, I used to not be the best at that, and I'd be like, hey, we've got to do this and we still need to do this. But now I understand why, so I can watch it.
Yeah, I think as well, it's learning to let some things go. It's okay that some
Yeah,
things have got a little bit more relaxed, and but also that also comes with age and experience as well, and
100%.
not wanting to be so stressed out as well.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I think that's a big thing when you were like asking about social before, is we get a lot of work, let's say through LinkedIn, we get bits through Instagram, and I'm constantly, just because of my knowledge and background in social strategy and now my knowledge of producing content, I'm constantly having ideas of like, we could do this for the company, I could do this on my own personal side. Like I'm kind of like a bit different on the whole personal brand thing. I think it can really work and has really worked for a lot of people. And we get most of our work through when we push things ourselves as our technically personal brand. But there's a lot of people that don't have the substance behind it, and it's more of an ego thing. So I use the word personal brand lightly, but there's a part of me that like wants to push that more on like my own Instagram now and start pushing it. But then I'm like, I just can't be bothered sometimes. And I've been creating content for clients like all day, and I'm like, this won't be good enough, because I'm seeing the stuff we're producing when we've got the budget for a client and it's really high end. And then I look at something that, I might just do in the studio myself to explain something. And I'm like, well, that's really poor quality compared to this. But actually what I'm starting to like get to the point now is more like people don't really care. I'm putting something out and it's obviously so obvious, but you don't, it's hard to sort of actually live it. Putting something out is better, that's maybe 50% there, is better than putting nothing out, that because you're waiting for it to be 100%.
And do you know what? On that same note, I've learned that. Oh, sorry, my dog's having a little shake.
That's all
I've
right.
learned that lesson with this podcast. So I spoke to my friend about it. I had him on, and I said to him like, "Oh, I'm going to need a recording studio. I'm going to need this, and I'm going to have to book people in and schedule it." And I made a really big thing out of it. And he was like, "Mate,
Yeah.
just get recording, just do it, and it'll get better as the more you do it. You'll find your feet while you're doing it, and you don't have to be perfect all of the time." And I think part of that goes back to our teenage years, being in having a lot of social media, growing up with social media, like starting, because then we've seen all these curated images, all these sponsored posts and what have you, and we're like, oh my god, we've got to be perfect all the time. And actually showing a bit of your personality and laughing when you fail, because we all trip up. I mean, I fall down the stairs all the time, but like literally at work as well. And I think that's a human side of you, and I think that's a nice thing for people to see.
100%, I agree. yeah, me and my fiance were actually talking about this recently. In that our generation, I'm saying, did you say you were 35?
Yeah.
So I'm 32. So similar areas. But that I say our generation is the only generation that's kind of grown up with both without technology and with technology. So like our parents' generations have never, they grew up without the internet and everything else. So if they're like, I want to have a go at it, but I'm not quite doing it. They don't feel that like internal guilt of, but I need to be because they didn't grow up with it. So it's more like if I do it, great. If I don't, I'm not fussed. Younger
Yeah.
generations have just grown up with it, so they're much easier at putting themselves out there, talking like they're talking to their fans, which then to me would feel cringe, but actually it's natural to them. But then for us, we've kind of like grown up without it and then introduced it. So we're kind of in this middle ground of we know it can do good, but we also know that, well, some of our parents were fine without it. So can I really be bothered? And it's like we're stuck, I think, in that middle ground at times where we kind of, we unfortunately see both sides of it. But I think doing something is better than nothing if that's what you want to do. And if you're not that bothered about it, then don't.
Yeah, exactly. Like my other half doesn't really go on Instagram that much. He's like not got a Facebook, not got a LinkedIn. Like he's like I don't think he's posted anything on social media for 4 years. I mean, bless him, he just goes on to like my
Yeah.
pictures and stuff and like my podcast and stuff. And number one supporter and all that. But
Yeah.
it it is a weird one because I find it a bit cringy doing like stories like where I'm talking and being like, oh, and I've got this person on this week. But if I don't do it, I feel like my engagement drops and then I could have got a few more listeners. And, it's a really weird place to be because I could happily be without it, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
also a bit addicted to it as well. I'm kind of in that, and also see its benefit
Yeah.
for all my work. It's a really weird one.
Well, that's that's the thing, because I know I've chatted to my parents in the past and bits of the family, and they're like, well, do you know, why do you need to post that? Do you need to do that? And like, get off your phone and stuff, because to them it's unnatural. Whereas sometimes I'll be picking up bits of content and little bits of cues that's given me ideas that's led to a piece of content that's effectively made the company money, which is paid by salary, which is paying my mortgage. So there's kind of like there's a reason to be doing it there if you look at it that way. And if we're essentially creating content like your sound stuff, or if we're shooting stuff that is going to be used on social, we need to understand what people are looking at on social. And I think I've worked with some agencies in the past where there's some creatives, and not naming any names because I don't want to sound too negative, but there are creatives you can tell, and they're like, I don't do the Facebook, and there may be art directors that are in the sort of 50s now, been in the game a while, and they are very experienced, but because they don't consume that media, because they don't see all that content, they're sort of suggesting things this is how we used to do it and how it looked and it always worked great maybe 20 years ago. But actually the people consuming that content now, and the behaviors are so different because we're different and our brains are different and we're understanding more about them. So I think there is unfortunately a bit of a necessity to be on social to understand what works, what doesn't. And I don't mean like TikTok dances necessarily, but things like trends, do you know what I mean? Like trends, like styling trends, like you need to know what's in, what colors are in, what fabrics are in, if you're going to be then doing that for a brand and keeping them at the forefront.
Yeah, that's it. And like also as well, you probably find the same. I'm answering emails, I'm answering jobs, I'm chasing invoices, I'm like getting options booked in, and so it looks like you're on your phone. And actually, like I have spoken to other people about this. I've put a boundary in now, and I don't tend to answer the phone after about 7:00 with work stuff, because then I'm all of a sudden accessible a lot longer than what I actually need to be. You need to be switched off a little. But yeah, sometimes I'll be on a job and then something will come through and I'm like, right, I have to answer this because it's my next job, and you have to take that 5 minutes quick, as my dad would say, oh, you're tick-tacking on your phone all the time. And it's definitely it's definitely good as research as well to find what other people are doing, what other stylists are doing, what other photographers are doing, to just give you more ideas next time you're on set. There might be a way of arranging stuff that I'd not thought of before that somebody else has done, or lighting for you guys or whatever. And I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
important to be on, but I do think it can be incredibly addictive.
yeah, yeah. But then I think you just do what you're doing there and put boundaries in,
Mm.
and when you use it and how often you do use it. And it's weird because when we say boundaries and use it, we're talking about it like it's a bloody drug, but
Yeah.
it kind of is in the way, like in how people are becoming addicted to social. But it is like, I remember chatting to, I think it might have been my mum, and it was like, describing how people use it, and almost that attitude. And I know my dad said it before, where it's like, we should be out playing football in the fields, not on the phones. Whereas maybe in a generation where that's what made you happy, but it doesn't mean that that's what will make people happy now. If some people like being on the computer playing Minecraft, if some people like being out in the field or playing, making music, whatever it is, yes, people probably still need to have social skills and learn to communicate and so on. But it's not that everyone that's, like you just said then, everyone that's on their phone isn't using it for the same reason. So if my dad looks at his phone to check, the chat about Man City on Facebook, it doesn't mean that when I'm looking at my phone, I'm in the same mindset. That's what I'm doing. I might be looking at something and sending a message to Cal to remember to chat to him about this reference that I've just seen because it's a shot that we might want to get for a shoot.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Like I found as well, my dad, bless him, is looking at reels on Facebook that have been churned out via TikTok, then Instagram, and then on Facebook, and he's like stuck in them for like 10 minutes, and you're like, Dad, 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 and he's like, look at this mixer or whatever, and you're like,
Yeah. Who doesn't love a cute puppy though? Let's be honest.
oh my god, yeah, yeah. My algorithm is mostly dogs. I have to say, and like this whole cheese tax thing. I don't know if you've seen it on socials when somebody opens the fridge, and their dog's there, and they have to flick them a bit of cheese. And I've definitely got a cheese monster there.
Yeah. What dog have you got? Can I ask?
Yeah, she's a Staffy Cross. She's a rescue dog. So we've had her for over 8 years. Yeah, she's a little grey little girl now, but yeah, she's I couldn't live without her, to be honest. But yeah,
I'm the same. I've got a golden cocker spaniel called Chester.
oh, nice.
Yeah, so he's 2.5. He's downstairs at the moment because he probably wouldn't be silent for this. But he comes into work pretty much every day. He comes into the studio. He's around sets and stuff. He's great.
Oh yeah, I've definitely had her in the studio before, and then I've like lost her because I don't always put a lead on, and turn around and the set builder is like fussing her and giving her kisses, and I'm like, great, I've lost the dog.
Yeah. Now we have, because Cal's got a Labrador called Freddie as well. So Freddie's 6, and so we have Freddie and Chester in the office most days. If we're on location, we don't take them. But if we're shooting in our little studio, then we tend to just check with clients that they're okay with it, and and they're just chilling out because they know like not to beg, they know not to try and nick food off the table or pull on the wires and stuff. They're pretty good, but they get loads of attention. Like clients, like, yeah, it looks fine, because they just want to get back to stroking the dogs.
Yeah, definitely found that with her as well. She's a bit of a fuss, like I'd call her a fuss whore, basically. She goes round to whoever's going to fuss her and then looks at me in the eye as if to say, you don't fuss me like this, when I absolutely do. And but yeah, she's the same. She doesn't beg for food or anything. I was doing like an Instagram layout with loads of like overhead food, and it was on the floor, and like she'd come in the studio and she didn't even go near it. You just tell her leave it and she's fine, Yeah,
well, Chess is the same in work, not at home. If I drop something on the kitchen floor, sorry, he's like, that's mine, mate. That's done. And I just can't help but laugh and like, be honest. You do voiceovers for your dog?
Yeah, and I sing to her. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, for some reason, Chester's like American. So I don't know why, but all the time he'll just be giving like myself or Laura, my partner, a face, and one of us will like do his voice, and it's always an American voice.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what voice she's got. Oh, it's probably like it's an English voice, but a bit of a like babyish voice. But she's got so many nicknames because she's called Coco, and then she'll probably look up now. But so it started off with Coco Havana, and then it started Coco Bean. Now it's moved to Beanie, and then it's, if she's been slightly naughty, she was naughty the other day and we had to, this is so stupid, but she nearly knocked the kitchen fitter over. So we had to swaddle her in a fleece blanket on the sofa and be like, just calm down a minute. And then my other half went, Coco Havana Bean. And she just looked at him like, oh no, I've been really told off.
Full name.
Yeah.
Like, shit's hit the fan when you get a full name.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, bless her. She's a little bit older now, so she's a bit more chilled. But the poor lad, he just nearly got knocked off his bloody feet.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah, and they don't give a shit, do they? They're just like, whatever, I've done it. I'm chilled. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Kieran. It's been so nice to find out how you got in this industry and hear about your dogs and the crazy lion story, which is just crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'll ever get bored of telling that one until people tell me. You've told me a million times, then maybe. But...
I am happy to hear it again.
No, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. And hopefully I'll see you in the studio soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!